Hey, listeners. Welcome to Straight Wife Trans Life. I'm Lisa, and in this episode, I'm going to share why I cannot stand the term trans widow. Before I start, I want to give you the heads up that I'm going to discuss the topic of suicide in case you need to turn that dial or skip this episode. All right, let's get into it. When my spouse first came out as a transgender woman 2.5 years ago, I would see the term trans widow floating around while I was desperately trying to find anything about other people going through this. In fact, there are groups called trans widows. And at the time, it made sense. I'm losing my husband in a way that I never could have imagined. So yeah, I guess that makes me a trans widow since the guy I knew has essentially died. Nope. How wrong and ignorant I was to think that. And she, my spouse, is definitely more alive than ever. I had gotten caught up in what other angry spouses were feeling, how they saw the situation for themselves, and when I started questioning why the term trans widow wasn't sitting well with me, and I realized more and more that it is selfish, dismissive, and more than anything transphobic, I came across a blog post by an actual widow whose husband had committed suicide due to severe depression, and she wrote a piece specifically to spouses of transgender people using the term trans widow. I will link the post in the episode description, and this is a blurb from her writing that stuck with me. But what your spouse wants, what your spouse is doing, is not yours to control. And they are not dead. They are not mentally ill because they want to live in a way that feels more authentic, more like the real them. And then she goes on to add, if you marry someone, you are making a commitment to them, not at one moment in time, but through all the ways they may change in the future. But there are plenty of reasons people can change in a marriage that mean they are no longer compatible. And it's all right then to say goodbye. That kind of goodbye is not like the goodbye I had to give. You will grieve if your marriage ends, but it is not a death. And she's right. And although her husband wasn't transgender, there are 2 other spouses of transgender people I have learned about who were almost real trans widows, plus one who is an actual trans widow. HBO Max had a series called We're Here, and in one episode it featured an older couple living in Florida. Well, one evening, the wife found her husband outside in their yard with a rope in his hand, looking for a tree limb tall and strong enough to end his life because he was scared to come out as the person he felt inside. He would rather kill himself than go on. His wife said, "We'll figure it out." And not related to the We're Here series, the wife of a former WWE wrestler found her husband sitting in a closet holding a shotgun. She also said they would figure it out. These are just 2 stories of close calls, and I know there are countless more, and not all of them have an ending that allows for a fresh start. A transgender woman in England was not lucky enough to have that second chance when her partner committed suicide. Suicide is a serious issue for transgender adults, and something I don't know and we can't know would be the statistics of how many people committed suicide before they came out as transgender. I can tell you that according to the Williams Institute and the 2015 U.S. Transgender Survey, the most recent report I found, those who reported that their spouses, partners, or children rejected them because they are transgender reported a higher prevalence of lifetime and past year suicide attempts. Those who reported rejection by their family of origin reported twice the prevalence of past year suicide attempts compared to those who had not experienced such rejection. The report dives into a lot more detail and percentages, but this gives you a solid picture that transgender people could use more support and less feeling like a disposable person or someone not worthy of being. I have found that people who follow this trans widow thinking tend to say the same things or use the same phrases, and I want to give you examples of some of the things that I hear and see and tell you why, in my experience, I think that they're wrong. Here's a common one. When my husband chose to do this to his family. No, this is not a choice. Being transgender is not a choice. My spouse went to a therapist for something unrelated and was shocked when the therapist said, "You check all the boxes for being transgender." Shocked, but also relieved because suddenly a lot of things made sense. And come on, transitioning is a lot of work. Not to mention that those who transition male to female now get to experience the joy of lower pay, the inequality as a female, and working twice as hard to be heard in meetings. Another one is, my marriage was a lie. Yes and no. I know that my spouse truly loves me and never meant for this to happen. Did she have feelings she didn't understand before we got married? Yes. But she stuffed them down because she has always been attracted to women and thought, I'm not transgender. I don't know what is wrong with me, but I'm not transgender because I love women. The concept of a trans lesbian wasn't something she thought was a thing. My marriage before disclosure was great. Perfect? Of course not. But I wouldn't trade it. And although it looks different and it was a rough first year after disclosure, I'm so happy I stayed. I still have my best friend by my side. She has my back, I have her back, and we will figure it out and make our own rules one day at a time. Another one is, my spouse was abusive, controlling, manipulative, and so on. If your spouse was any of those before transition, you are already in a bad marriage and awful situation. You deserve better. Transition might be the cherry on top of the hurt, but you're still not a trans widow. You are someone who thought they had something good, and it turned out very bad. If you are in an abusive relationship, you need to find a way to safely leave. Now. Please find a way. Your partner or spouse needs serious help, and you need to distance yourself for your safety and sanity. Now, I want to make another point. Divorced people don't go around saying they're divorced widows. I don't see celebrity couples divorcing and then going on to share how they're now divorced widows. People who are cheated on don't say they are cheated on widows. Now, golf widows, that term is not about people, so it doesn't apply here. Listen, trans widow is a transphobic term and concept because spouses think it is okay to consider a situation and person they don't agree with as dead, and they don't want someone else like that to be considered human and allowed to exist. They are projecting their own fear, anger, hurt, and ignorance and using it against their transgender spouse and the transgender community to create a very hostile, transphobic, unsafe, demeaning, and unfair environment for them. The term trans widow is a form of gender policing, which essentially means that only two genders should be considered real and anything else should be punished. No coloring outside the lines. So what can a spouse say instead of spreading the I am a trans widow transphobia? Say, yes, I was married and things changed. That's all you really have to say. Or, I had to say goodbye to that period in my life so I could welcome something new. Or, thanks for asking, but I'm not ready to talk about what's happening. I still need time to process things. If you are in this situation, maybe your spouse recently came out or you are struggling at the processing and grieving stage of this journey, please remember that your transgender spouse or partner, regardless of relationship status, is human, alive, and figuring things out too. You can be angry. You can hurt to the core. Your whole world can be flipped upside down. It will be flipped upside down. But you are not a trans widow. You are a person who was presented with one of life's unexpected twists and turns, and you need time to heal and decide your new way forward. Until next time, transphobia and the term trans widow, bad. Treating others with basic decency, even when it's tough. Now we're talking.